continuăm?
Sigur că da. Vă spuneam că William Higham este unul dintre vizionarii care știu înainte ca lucrurile să se întâmple sau ca procesul cognitiv să fie declanșat propriu-zis, ce vor gândi clienții voștri, ce vor gândi angajații voștri, ceea ce este fantastic. De 20 de ani conduce Next Big Thing, compania de consultanță, printre clienți, ca să vă dați seama de amploare, Amazon, Walt Disney, MTV și mulți alții. De altfel îl puteți vedea și pe Netflix în documentarul The Future of. Dar de ce să îl vedem pe Netflix? Pentru că William Higham este astăzi aici.
Thank you. Fantastic. Well, I didn't see that coming, that I'd be have a mayor in front of me. That's a great honor. Thank you. Fantastic. I try and see everything, but I couldn't quite see that. Right. Thank you for that introduction. That was great. Thanks to GPI for inviting me down. Thanks to you for coming down today. I am indeed a business futurist. As was just said, as Adrienne just said kindly, I've been running a consultancy called Next Big Thing for almost 20 years now. And my job as a business futurist is to work with clients, with companies, to help them better understand what the future is going to look like, and most importantly, how they can adapt to that. And at the beginning, typically the first several years of what I was doing, really I was focusing on, well, how do you reach the customer? Or how do you create products that will work in the future? So it was always about customers and products. But for the last 5 years, perhaps, I've been noticing something else, and I've been talking about something else, which is actually, it's not just about the products you make. It's not just about the way you reach customers. Increasingly, the way to success, the way to create a future-proof company, is to create a company, an organization that works, is to focus increasingly on the way your organization works, on the people in your organization, on the workflows, on the resourcing, how you deploy your people, how you deploy your resources. Increasingly, that is going to be the future. So to have a successful company in the future, you will need increasingly to focus on the organization itself as much as the customer. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today. But although I'm talking about the future, it's always useful to look back at the past. And I'm going to start by looking at the past because we've got coming up in 2026 a very important anniversary. The 300th anniversary of this place. This is Admiralty House in London. It was the first ever purpose-built office. It was built in Britain, so look, we've done some pretty bad things recently. Brexit, Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, practically destroying the economy of the world. But we are quite good at inventing things. Certainly back then we were. So we created what was the first ever office. A guy called Thomas Ripley. He was a bit of a jobbing architect. He wasn't the greatest architect, but my goodness, he had a vision with this, creating this office, and the team he worked with. His vision has lasted almost 300 years. If you look at this, it's hard to tell from these, the blueprints here, but what he created and what the team around him created 300 years ago is pretty recognizable now. This is the boardroom. And we can see the 26 equivalent of the whiteboards up here. This is pretty much the boardroom of today. Again, if you look behind me, you will see the rooms. We have the finance department. We have the sales department. We have lots and lots of desks. And the organization was very, very similar. In fact, if you took Thomas Ripley, put him in a time machine, brought him all the way forward to now, put him in the office of today, put him in the business of today, yes, he might be confused by computers or phones, but he'd be able to walk around the office. He'd know where the boardroom and the conference room was. He'd understand how the departments worked. Well, that is fantastic for Thomas Ripley. That shows that Thomas Ripley had a great vision. He was able to create something that lasted 300 years. But my goodness, is that good for us? That we are working in an office space, a workplace, an organization that is 300 years old, that has barely changed in 300 years? I don't think so. If other things, think of all the things that have changed in our lives over the last 300 years. Imagine if the transport had not changed in 300 years. Imagine if our clothes had not changed in 300 years. If medicine had not changed in 300 years. In fact, if that were the case, when you go back to your offices next week and you open the window, this is the scene that you would have seen, that you'd see outside your window. If nothing else had changed, if the transport hadn't changed, we'd be in carriages. If the clothes hadn't changed, I'd be addressing you in a top hat and frock coat, which would be nice. But my goodness, we are living in an office space, we are living with an organization that is no longer fit for purpose. The rest of our lives have changed, and yet the office hasn't. Is it any wonder that we're seeing figures like these? 86% of European workers are either unengaged or actively disengaged. 39% experience a lot of stress every day. A third expect to quit their job in the next 3 to 6 months. The workplace, the organization, the hierarchies that we have no longer work. We need not just a slight change in the workplace. We don't just need to tweak a little, say, well, some people can work from home, but everybody else goes into the same old office. We still have the same hierarchies. No. We need a big change. We need a revolution, a reinvention of the office, of the workplace. As McKinsey said, when technologies converge, industries transform, work is remade. Just tweaking the old management system based on old rules will no longer be effective. To usher in the organization of the future, CHROs could do nothing less than reimagine the basic tenets of the organization. This is true. I believe we need to look at the office, the workplace, we need to look at our hierarchies and organization and reward structures, and we need to start from scratch. Just like retail is to an extent. Retail, if you look at what's happening with retail, with the online space, with e-commerce, retail is having to reinvent what the physical shop means. And I think that's the same with the workplace. So I want to do a thought experiment. Albert Einstein called them thought experiments. It's like an experiment that you're doing in a laboratory, but it's in your head. And that thought experiment is, I want to imagine that I'm not Thomas Ripley in 1726 creating the first ever purpose-built office, but I'm Thomas Ripley's great-great-great-great-great-great-grandson. And his office never existed. Let's imagine that I am his great-great-great-grandson, and I'm creating the very first purpose-built office ever. Right now, not in 1726, but in 2023. And I'm doing it here with your help. I will count you as the workforce. We will count this as the space. So that's what I want to try and do today. Imagine that we are creating an office and an organization and a hierarchy from scratch right now, the first one ever. That's what we're going to do. You up for that? Yes. Good. Okay. So if we're going to do that, I like this, by the way. I feel a bit like Bono from U2. It's fantastic having this thing up here. I should run around the stage as well. It's great. So if we are going to create an environment and a hierarchy that works for today and will work into the future, we need to think about what the future is going to be. What will the future of work be like? How will people work, and what will matter in the future? So let's start by doing that a little bit. Let's look at 3 basic tenets, 3 big drivers of what's going to create great work and success in the workplace from now on. What is the first factor we're going to encounter over the next 5 to 10 years? It's what they call uncertainty. The one certainty is uncertainty. I'm hardly the first person to say that uncertainty is coming, but my goodness. It's not that we've had a difficult time, uncertain time over the last 5 years. It's the fact that this is the new normal. Uncertainty is the new normal. VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. Those 4 words, sorry, I'll let the translators catch up. Those 4 words, that is the landscape, the business landscape we are going into. We are moving into an uncertain world. Why will it be uncertain? It'll be uncertain in terms of technology. We don't know exactly what's going to happen, but we do know that the technology over the recent years has made huge disruptions, created brand new business models. So we don't know exactly what's going to happen, but we know any moment something could change our entire sector. We also know that AI within technology, AI is coming, and that is probably going to be, I think Bill Gates said, he thinks it's the greatest technology, or going to be the greatest disruptor since the internet. Our economy too, uncertainty. I don't think there's an economist out there who could put their hand on the heart and say they know what's going to happen. Why does a lot of these things happen? Why is there uncertainty? Because we are typically now a much more engaged world. So something that happens in Wuhan can affect the rest of the world. Something that happens on Wall Street can affect the rest of the world. Within seconds, it can disrupt completely. So that is the world we're going into. So in order to create an organization that will function in the future, it needs to be an organization that is ready for whatever comes. It has to be a flexible organization. That is key. Flexibility, obviously something that our employees want too. So it's great, it's a win-win. So we'll have an uncertain world. We need a flexible organization. Meanwhile, what is the other thing that's going to be essential to success? Productivity. Productivity around the globe is not in great shape. Basic economics says that productivity is what the productivity of each individual, that is what drives profit. It feels sometimes like we've forgotten about that. But actually making each individual more productive, that will drive success, and that will be essential over the next 5 to 10 years. And how will we do that? Again, with technology. Empowering each individual, giving individuals more power. We need it. As we're constantly now, as individuals, as citizens, as consumers, we have more power. And we need to feel we've got it in the workplace as well. You know, look at this factors now. Over half of us now self-diagnose. In other words, work out our symptoms via Dr. Google before going to a real doctor, compared to just a third in 2010. A third of us own a fitness monitor of some sort. I have here a Fitbit. Anybody else got some sort of fitness monitor? Yes, lady here. Anybody else? Little tracker? Yes, we have a few. Hands up, go on. Don't be shy. Yes, we're all thinking about that. Why do I have this? Why perhaps do you? Because we want to improve ourselves. We want to know how we're feeling. We want to improve ourselves as individuals. This whole idea of self-improvement, Kaizen, which we'll come to in a bit. Increasingly, we want to learn. We want to go to TED Talks. We want to find out more. We want to be educated. We want TV shows that teach us how to dance or how to crochet. Interestingly as well, here's this stat. A third, 31%, almost a third, of all of the people who left a company, who quit a company, did so in order to start a new one. That's why they left the company, because they weren't feeling they were being given enough power themselves. They wanted to go out and have more power within the workplace themselves, running their own company. People have autonomy outside of work. They want more autonomy in work. Technology will help them do that, and it will make them more productive. And what else will increase productivity in the future, given what's happening now? Engagement. The only thing worse than productivity figures right now are engagement figures. Just 17% say they feel connected to an organization, right? The organization they're in, or the team they're in. Just 17%. It's shocking to most people. You may well know these figures. It may not be shocking to you. You're talking to employees all the time. But this isn't just about the workplace. The point is, as we'll see here, over half of all Europeans distrust all institutions. They distrust the government. They distrust big business. They distrust the media. This sense of feeling disengaged from the world around you, from the people who are supposed to be in charge, that is a problem. And as a result, it's because we can't trust up here anymore. We have to trust somewhere. So we can't trust up here, we trust sideways. We're starting to care more and more about our friends and our family and our work colleagues and the people like us and the people who share our interests and the people who share our hobbies. That's what matters. That's where we're increasingly getting the support from. That's where we will get the support from. So how will we drive engagement over the next 5 to 10 years in any business? Increasingly about creating a sense of community. That will be absolutely vital. We have all the stats showing us it matters to people, this idea of community. We're seeing it. During COVID, anybody here help out a neighbor? Maybe go shopping for a neighbor? Yeah? A couple of nodding people, some very kind people here. Don't be afraid. It was a good thing to do. Again, they're starting to feel a bit of a community feeling, but during COVID, that community feeling rose and rose. So locality, community, people like me. So that is the future of a successful company. A successful company in the future needs to be flexible. It needs to allow autonomy. It needs to build community. Okay. So let's say those are our 3 foundations. Let's place them here. We have here community on this side, flexibility over here, embedded down, and autonomy over here. So, we have our foundations. We know what the basis of our company needs to be. Let's get cracking and build that organization of the future. Let's think about it. What will the organization of the future be? If we'd never had an office before, if we'd never had a hierarchy, what would it be? We've just said it needs to be flexible. So how will we create flexibility within the workplace, within our organization? We need flexibility on 2 levels. Any company going forward will need flexibility in terms of people and flexibility in terms of place. We need to give people flexibility. We also need to have a flexibility of our employees. Now, looking around, imagining this is the workforce that I'm trying to create the office for. Typically now then, right now I'd say people from that very edge all the way over perhaps to here, all there would be full-time employees, typically, and perhaps everybody here would be consultants or maybe part-time workers and so on. That will change in the future. If we have an uncertain world and we have to change, imagine there could easily be another equivalent of COVID. Suddenly, within your sector, there could be a technological shift that means that everything changes. You will need not to have this many people who are currently full-time employees. It's not going to work. You don't want to have to lay people off. There's nothing worse, I believe, than laying anybody off. So in the future, within 10 years, I would say the people who are contract workers, the people who are part-timers, the people who are freelancers, here, all the way over here. Perhaps this many will be full-time. And what does that mean? It means that when things get bad, you can shrink the company. But when things get better, suddenly, when you weren't expecting it, you can bring the company out. I call it a concertina company. But here I think you'd call it an accordion company. So, like an accordion or a concertina, when it's good, you bring it out. When it's bad, you bring it down. It still creates great music. We will need to create companies that can just shift in scale. Now, this is not an excuse to treat the workers who are not full-time badly. The workers who are full-time, this is the point. We will need to treat them better than we do right now. We will need to somehow integrate all of these people into the organization. And that's when culture will come in, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But that is key. So yes, there will be fewer full-time workers, but the part-time workers will be an essential part of the organization. It's key. So we will need a flexible workforce. It's not just to say we'll redeploy, but we also need to reskill. Because clearly, the stats here, 14% of jobs, over the next 15 years, 14% of all the typical jobs that we have right now will go. So that means, I'm afraid, the people sitting over here, in the back, over there, let's say this is probably about 14%, I'm very sorry. I'm afraid all of your jobs have just been wiped out. And also not very good for about this many people. Your jobs have been completely reorganized. Not very good feeling. So, how do we stop that being a bad thing? We stop that being a bad thing by constantly reskilling, by constantly trying to anticipate what the skills of the future will need to be, to ensure that you as individuals, your employees, your workforce, have the skills that will continue to be useful. So, we need to think about that. We need to create, I reckon realistically, seriously, we should be spending at least 10% of an employee's time on training. At least an afternoon a week. And that training should be, what should it be? Well, part of it should be thinking about your particular job, their particular job right now, and reading up on what's happening with technology, getting a sense of what's coming through, and thinking about how that can be tweaked. But also the other part of reskilling will be giving people the ability to change, the ability to work in different ways, no matter what happens. So those new skills that we're going to need, the transferable skills, the soft skills, people talk about it, but it's absolutely right. So half the time of training should be, what will this particular job I'm doing now be like in the future? How can I gain the knowledge for that? The other half is learning about how to be flexible, how to be empathetic, boosting our creativity. Because again, if something new happens, we have to suddenly change on the spot. Analysis skills, that's absolutely what we need to do, to create these new skills that will cross over, that will work in any situation. Perhaps moderating. So many things that we need to do. So that's a quick overview of how you adapt your employees, your people. How do you adapt your space, your place? Okay, thinking about our workforce here as well. Good news is you're back, by the way. We reskilled you, so you've got a job again, which is nice. So we were saying, I think, weren't we, that this many are fully employed, and the rest of you are sort of part-time workers and so on, with nice benefits, by the way, all very good, much better than it is today. So where are you working? Well, some of you over here are working from home, and over there are working from home, and some people here are coming to the office a bit more regularly. But also, some of you aren't working from home, you're working from co-working spaces, perhaps. Do you have many co-working spaces here? The idea, yes, everywhere we go now. Increasingly, people seem to think it's a kind of a binary. We're either working from home or we're working from the office. Well, actually, more and more of us are starting to work in between, in cafes, in co-working spaces. So everybody's going to be working somewhere different. So absolutely, we need to allow for that, because people work better differently. Actually, looking at the stats, some people say that we work better from home and more productively. So we'll need to do that. It's going to be absolutely key that we enable people to work from these spaces. So companies should be putting money into co-working spaces to allow, you'll have lots of people working in, broadly, living in a similar area, so why not create a co-working space for them to work in that's not an hour's trip to the office, but works together. Or perhaps leasing a new space or working with a co-working space. So whatever you can do, creating all these different places that people can work from. But the main office, the core office that people work from, we'll talk about its exact function later, because it's twofold, and it's to do with people. But the key with it will be that the office of the future needs to be created functionally, not around department. Again, this isn't just about space, workspace. This is increasingly about, as I said, hierarchies and organization, the way you create the company. It shouldn't be lots and lots of office spaces, the marketing department here and the finance department here. It should be functional. Perhaps we have a design team here that covers all of the design, because actually it would be useful to have one space where all of the design can be done. So all of the spaces within your departments, within your offices should be functional. We also need to create modular space. Again, we don't know how many people are going to be in at any one time. We don't know what they're going to be doing. So creating here, we have a place that can work as a basketball court in the evenings and as perhaps a canteen or something else during the day. Perhaps it could be a meeting room, whatever it can be. Creating this sort of modular space using modular furniture. It shouldn't just be about all these desks which have got wires and a prop here. So then we're probably going to need some lockers, because people will want their own things. But there's people increasingly, when they come in, it is going to be hot desking. You don't want people to have this locked-in desk. We need creative people. So people will be here, will create this. They have lockers where they put their stuff. They bring it out. They sit at their desk. And will the desk be the typical desk? No. This is where the desk is going in the future. And what I'm talking about, honestly, the technology I'm talking about now is not decades away. This is a perfectly feasible operation here, a smart desk. So again, this will be where we are in a few years' time. You don't necessarily want everyone to bring in their laptops and try and balance them here and then sitting in a chair. We need smart technology. So as soon as they come in, they sit down on the chair knows, can tell what their weight is, so the chair can actually adapt to them. So they are feeling supported by the chair. Again, smart chairs, smart desks, so you just click, you plug in, you put your code in, it knows who you are. You can create this desk. So all of this needs to be thought about. It needs to be as adaptable, as flexible an office as possible. Created around not what other people are doing, not what we've done for 300 years, but around what your specific needs are in terms of the needs of your specific employees and what your needs are as a company. All about that. So that's the flexible office, the flexible hierarchy. What about the autonomy? What about giving people more personal power? One of those is giving people individual power, creating these tech-enabled people. AI stands for artificial intelligence. It also stands for augmented intelligence. That's what we're talking about here. We have more and more individuals. People talk about automation and robotics, which is going to get rid of many people. It might get rid of a few, but actually the smart companies will be working with the technology, working with the artificial intelligence, increasing people's individual productivity, whether it's in a factory, whether it's on the retail floor with people being able to having little headsets or having Google Glass, which enables them to know exactly who a person is when they walk into a shop. All of this technology will enable the individual. But we also need to cater to individual needs. Every individual is going to have needs, and we know now that our employees are more demanding, and they want to have these individual needs catered to. So thinking about what sort of perks we give people. I saw a company recently which is giving people a certain amount of time of legal advice, which is great. You're going through a divorce. Actually, if your company can offer you some free legal time, that's going to be a fantastic thing for you as an individual. But also, the other thing that I think makes me sad about companies, and we need to boost into the future, is thinking about all of the kind of non-core skills that all of our employees have. So, all of the things that we do outside of our core work that we could be encouraging. Anybody here does a little bit of art outside of the office, perhaps as a hobby, some sort of art, sketching, painting, anything like that? Yes? Ah, Henning, yes. Sketching the Norwegian mountains, no doubt. But think about all of the skills that we have. Perhaps people DJ, perhaps people they organize their local residence committee. All of these individual people we have, they've got new skills. Let's think about how we can bring those out. It's going to be essential to people. In order to bring out this productivity within people, we have to create this. And people want that. This whole idea outside of the office is about Kaizen. It's about my best me, being my best me. So that's how we find a way to bring out the individual. We give them technology that makes them stronger, that makes them do their job better, but we also ask them and pull out their individual needs and their individual skill sets. But a company that's just full of individuals isn't going to function well. So the company of tomorrow, we know lots of individuals won't function well. The hierarchies we have right now, if something changes, we have a hierarchy where we have to wait for a week for the head of department to come back with an answer, or for the MD or the CEO to come back with an answer. It's not going to work in the future that we've got coming, this VUCA future, this uncertainty where anything could change any minute future. So, to lots of individuals, the current hierarchy won't work. Everything I've read tells me that the best way forward for any organization is team-based. Creating these little teams. Jeff Bezos from Amazon, he talks about 2 pizza teams. He reckons that back in the day when they were creating, and when you said when you're innovating, when you're coming up with a new idea, and increasingly innovation is what we're going to be doing over the next 5 years, innovating. He said, you want a 2 pizza team. So that's a team that's no bigger than can be fed by 2 pizzas. So if it gets into the evening and they're still frantically working away, you order 2 pizzas and that will satisfy them. It shouldn't be bigger than that. It shouldn't be a huge department. It shouldn't be some hierarchy. We need lots and lots of these little teams. These teams work in terms of innovation, but they also work in terms of culture. If we have people who are, some people who are working from the office, some people are working from home, some people are working from co-working, it's very difficult when you have a whole department for those people to feel part of the organization. But if they're part of a small team, that can work well. So say we're wanting to, you'll pick and choose your teams. People will be part of more than one team. But again, think about, okay, we have to create something new. We have to create some point of sale for a new youth fashion retail shop. Okay, what do? We put a team together to do it. We put a team together, so we think to ourselves, maybe, who have we got have we got anybody here under 30? Oh, okay, under 40, let's say. Youthful under 40s. Yes, okay, we have a couple. So you pull out some of your younger people, you'd pull out the people who perhaps from retail, anybody here from retail? Yes, a couple of nods. Oh, quite a few at the back there, a little retail gang at the back there. We pull out people from retail, we put them in the team. So have people from different age groups, perhaps all different types of people. Put them into this team. Try and create this. Enable them to create their own demands and their own rewards. Make it results-based. Give the team the leeway to go off and create this. Make sure there's somebody experienced enough to do it, but they don't have to be a fully fledged leader. It shouldn't be about leadership, it should be about guidership. It should be about a team which is self-managing. So you give them results. If they can show you that they're moving towards the results, fantastic, create that. So a mix of demographics, mix of skill sets, mix of functions, all these little teams. This is where we're going with the office of the future. It will boost the closeness of people. Teams are also great. One of the hardest things, as we all know, is especially from a lot, in terms of people working from home, creating that onboarding, creating that sense of people being able to to get the ideas of what's going on in the company, but also to get the experience of the company. You need to onboard. Much better, easier to do in a team. Even if someone's working from home, to have somebody working with you. So teams. Shouldn't be big departments with all this hierarchical structure where people are just paid to come into the office. Increasingly, it will need to be small teams that create their own OKRs, their own results that self-manage. Okay. And finally, community. If we are going to have an office itself, it needs to have a purpose, just like the physical shop needs a purpose. And actually, they're quite similar. So, The community. The office needs to create a community on 2 levels. It needs to boost collaboration, work collaboration. It needs to be a place where people can go to work together and to create fantastic work together, because collaboration is the way forward. It also needs to create a culture. So working together to collaborate, but also a culture. The first thing we do, if we are going to create, maybe perhaps we have an old office, we want to turn it into the office of the future, we want to turn it into a new office. What do? The first thing we do is chuck out, or sell, half the desks. Get rid of half the desks. You don't need desks in an office for the sort of thing we're talking about. Desks you can use at home if people need a little bit want to spend a day concentrating. Home or co-working spaces near where they work are fine. The office shouldn't be about coming in, sitting at your desk, tapping away like this. That's a waste of some prime real estate. The office needs to be a place for collaboration. So get rid of at least half the offices. It should be about collaboration spaces, huddle rooms. That's what the office should be about. Perhaps as well, we have a bank of areas where people can do their VR and AR training. Because again, the training one-on-one is going to be great. So it could be around collaborative training, collaborative working. This is not the ideal space, surrounded by desks, trying to somehow get a team actively working together. So whatever we can do, boost collaboration. The office needs to be a place where we collaborate, not a place where we go and think, a place where we collaborate. That's why you're going to the office, to go in and meet people, to go in and work together with people. Perfect. And thinking about maybe collaborating in all parts of the company. Elon Musk, he's a funny chap, but he actually, in terms of business, is one of the closest things to a genius that we have seen over the last 30 years. He has revolutionized not one but 2 industries, the space industry and the car industry. So yes, a little bit odd, but he understood in terms of business. And one of the things he did at SpaceX, which is brilliant and was forward-thinking, was the manufacturing space for SpaceX and the office were in the same building. So you had this massive manufacturing space. You had all the offices around it. So everybody could see what everybody else was doing. The people in the offices could see this giant rocket that everyone was building. So again, collaboration space, thinking about ways to create that. And therefore, if we have the office as a collaboration space, the people who need to go into the office, the people who are going to be leading, will need to have all those understanding, empathy, listening, collaboration skills. Because that's what's going to work in the future. Meanwhile, yes, we want to go into the office, we want to collaborate, it's on that level, it's about work. But we need engaged staff. We know that productivity, we've seen all the figures, I'm sure you're the same. You know that productivity comes out of engagement. If people are engaged in their work, they will be more productive. How do you make them engaged? You build a great culture. You build a great community. That's how you do it. You make people feel part of the organization. The more you do that, the more they feel part of your organization, the more engaged they are, the more productive they'll be. People who are connected to a company, 29% more likely to trust that company. This feeling that I'm part of it, that's essential. So what would I say? A huge part of the office's purpose will be just to build culture. You need to find spaces within the office just to build culture. Don't worry about whether that's actually going to boost profits in the short term. Think about how you can make people, what sort of spaces you can create. Gyms and cafes and having concierges that make people feel good. This could be, what could it be? It could be a bar. It could be part of a co-living space. It could be part of a university dorm, or it could be an office. This is what you want. You want to see lots of people doing this. There needs to be a huge percentage of time and space given over to purely creating culture, making people enjoy the work they do. That is going to be the future. whether it's canteens, sports halls, whatever it is, anything that encourages that. Find time and space to create that. There's a little bit about if you look back again at what happened in the earliest days of the tycoons and some of the early offices, the early factories, whether it was Mr. Cadbury in England or Mr. Ford in America, they created these kind of villages. They created these small places where everyone lived and worked. So maybe that ultimately in 10, 20 years, we will start to see people living next to the office, feeling part of the office. That blurring of time between work and play, between work and life, we need to blur that. We need to create something where people feel passionate. They don't switch off their real self when they come into work. They feel passionate about the new one. Okay. We need to build an organization that is flexible, that is autonomous, or encourages autonomy, that builds community. That is the organization we need. The people here in this room need to help us build that. The successful organization of the future, it won't just be about the best products, because you can copy products. It won't be about the best marketing teams, because you can poach marketers. Success tomorrow will be about the most flexible structures, about having the most engaged, collaborative, inclusive culture, creating the smartest workflow, the best allocation of resources. Increasingly, the successful company of tomorrow, it'll be about people strategy. People strategy, and the way you organize your people will drive company strategy, will drive success. Now, the smart amongst you will have noticed something. The organization needs to be, the organization of your company, of your team, is going to be paramount. The people are going to be paramount. We need to focus on the people, on workflows, on encouraging people. There's going to be some people to do that for us. We're going to need some people to change this culture. If everything is going to be focused on making sure that workflows go, making sure that people work, there's only one group of people that can do that, and they're sitting in this room. The success of future companies lies, to a great extent, in the hands of the HR departments. We have to change the organization. The only people who can do that is the HR department. That's the key. So you ready? You're going to roll up your sleeves? You up for it? Bit of a revolution, bit of change? Now, it's going to mean there's going to be some differences within HR. It's going to mean we know already that automation is going to impact HR, so there are certain jobs that automation will do. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, because that will free you up to be able to focus on the key things, which will be around strategy to an extent, to thinking about actually not just what can we do day to day in terms of our people, but how can we build a long-term company that is people-focused, that is all around. How can we do that? The other thing you're going to need to do is to be able to work with the IT department, perhaps the CRE department as well, to be able to organize these workflows. Because I talked very happily about people wandering into the office and doing this and collaborating, but all of that is going to need to be organized. You're going to need to have the most incredible AI to organize that. Which of these office rooms do you need to convert into what? Who's coming in when? Who worked in this team with that person before and they worked really well, so let's put them in a team again. Those sorts of things are going to be essential to be able to manage those workflows, allocate those resources, deploy people, redeploy people. Also, to focus on the employee experience, to help build those cultures. It's absolutely essential. The HR team will be at the forefront of business success over the next 5 to 10 years. There is a revolution coming in the workspace, in the organization of the office. A revolution is coming. And for that revolution to succeed, it will need the HR team to be on the barricades, leading from the front. Thank you.
Thank you very much.